Well, the Dalai Lama is chosen by going through a bunch of children, and there's like a set of toys that the previous Dalai Lama had chosen, and the previous one, and the previous one. And so one of these kids chooses the toys that the previous Dalai Lama had, and then they decide and say that, well, he chose those toys, so he is this incarnation.
Among other tests, but yeah.
There's other things. I don't.
Let's pretend that's it. It's just like there's a bunch of toys. They bring in a bunch of kids. One of the kids picks out the right toys. That's the Dalai Lama. We're gonna take him to the temple, raise him as the Dalai Lama, teach him all the spiritual practices, meditations, like whatever stuff, just like Dalai Lama stuff. Bring him to be this person who can be a beacon for others, and amazing dude. The funny part is you could kind of just pick like infinite kids, and eventually some kid, it's like that, one of the kids is going to pick.
Yeah.
Probably many of the kids would pick those toys out of coincidence, by accident, because they like it. There's probably certain energies or whatever dynamic to it, and kids can pick up on like fields a lot better than adults give them credit for, and they'd just be able to pick out the things that are like really good, whatever, and then you could raise those kids as if they're the Dalai Lama, and you probably end up with very similar results. You probably end up like, you just throw a bunch of awesome stuff at the kid, teach them all the coolest practices, all the coolest terminology and lessons.
Treat them like they're going to be this holy person that the Dalai Lama's just...
Treat them like they're going to be awesome, and they are awesome.
and then it'll probably happen.
And it would happen, and then the results would not be too much different, and it would just be different based on like the person, whatever it is. But like, it doesn't. It might even be the case. That'd be funny if it did happen at some point in like some ancient Dalai Lama's past, or even this current Dalai Lama, that it was just like a random kid who happened to pick the things, because the same thing would happen almost. And then, if you just did that with a bunch of people, like you just took a bunch of kids and you gave them all the kind of environment where it's like, here's all the like basic mental and consciousness and spiritual related tricks and tools and methods that you can use and techniques that'll help you develop a very strong and sound mind and be very clear and very like just wholesome and kind and all the really basic fundamental human stuff. You cultivated that in them, and then they grew up, and you would have this community of Dalai Lamas. And imagine if you just scaled that to the world, where it's like you took kids and you're like, you're going to be awesome, you are awesome, we're going to teach you all the most awesome stuff to be the awesomest you can be. Imagine what a world we'd have.
Well, if you think about it, like Krishnamurti is the same way.
Yeah, just grabbing a person. You're going to be the Messiah.
You're going to be the Messiah.
And then he just turns out to have like some of the...
And then he's even like, he's like, well, I am not the way you want me to be, but I'm going to teach the world good things anyway.
Yeah, it's just like, no matter who you take, if you took kids and they're just like, you're going to be awesome, and you are awesome, and we're going to teach you all the best stuff. What do you expect to happen? Like, just, and you just...
And especially if there was, like, a bunch of that. Like, there's just these... I mean, there's more than we mentioned, but there's rare cases of these individuals who get that kind of thing, and then they're often isolated, and they don't have, like, a bunch of people getting the same kind of learnings.
Yeah, and, like...
Which would just skyrocket their learning to be more wholesome.
And it's very, like, logarithmic, too, in the sense of, like, if you took, say, one, we'll call them, just highly evolved person.
Yeah.
And, like, that's something. You take two, that's something. If you take, like, a bunch of them, all of those people kind of bounce off each other and, like, resonate and amplify. And it creates, like, it's almost like if you took, like a team, like a sports team
like
or something.
Great hockey player, like, second grade opera.
Yeah, like a great thing isn't like a single individual. Doesn't amount to an entire team. Doesn't amount to a community. Like, they can only do so much, and that's why, like, disciple. Almost every big spiritual teacher has like tons of disciples. Doesn't matter if they're Jesus, Buddha, or whatever. There's like disciples, and without the disciples, nothing would happen. Like, this person would just help a lot of people, but then you would not have books about them and like things passed down and communities that grow and swell and turn into things. But if we just treated a community of people that way and an upbringing, then you'd have this community, and that kind of amplification would just instantly, one generation, world peace. It's like, it's inevitable. There's no other possible thing that could happen, but nobody's gonna do that unless there's like there's no, it has never been done really. So like the most we have is schools that are like really, really good schools from young age. Like people grow up and go to something like Yogananda school or something. It's like, this is great, but it's not quite to the extreme where you have an entire community around it of being like, you're all basically messiahs, because every person on the planet is basically a messiah to some degree or another, and we all have the potential to be that way, and to be like, from birth, from upbringing, let's just train you all and like, give you, because we're training kids all the time, like we train people all the time, everybody's trained all the time with everything we encounter and all the ways we go about everything, every story, and if we just gave the context to reflect on in different ways, to make different decisions, and those decisions happen to be really awesome, what do you expect to happen? It's so easy. But nobody's ever really seen that. Those who have seen, say, the Dalai Lama and encountered him and stuff like that, they see it in him. They might think this is a special case. It's the Dalai Lama. Or they may have seen multiple people of that level, of that like higher evolved form, or like variation of a person, and think like this is something to strive for, or like maybe they might not even be able to get to that point because of whatever other circumstances are going on, or something within like they haven't grown up that way, so they don't have the determination or the devotion or discipline or whatever it is to shift their entire paradigm to go in a different direction. Like so often we hear things like you just go on the internet, search up like people that their paradigm changed because they read The Power of Now or The Course in Miracles, or they went to a Vipassana course, or anything. And so many things, it's like massive paradigm shift. And often meeting the Dalai Lama or something would be like massive paradigm shift. But they're coming from a place where they need to have a paradigm shift. What if you just started off in that paradigm?
Yeah.
And then like, where would that balloon to? We don't know, and we can't know, and we can imagine, but it'd probably be way cooler than we'd imagine, because if you're starting in that paradigm, where do you shift to? When the entire paradigm, there's a bunch of people in this paradigm where they're all like at that level. What happens? Because like, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no thing that would have a greater impact on all of humanity and the planet itself than that. Really. It's like...
Yeah, I mean, if you just think about those handful of people who are like that and how much change they make.
Gandhi, Dalai Lama, Buddha, Jesus, etc. More impact than anything else. And those are just individuals, and then they get a bunch of disciples, and it's like, what if we just did this thing?
Yeah.
What if we just purposely tried to help more people learn how to be that? And like often it would take us, it takes a certain level of consciousness to be like that too. By that I mean it would take a certain level of consciousness for enough people to be like, let's help some people see if they can reach that point, because most of those people would not be at that point. So you'd have to have enough people highly developed enough that are like, okay, I understand that I'm at that point, and I have problems, and I'm working on my problems, I'm dealing with it, and hopefully by helping these kids grow up and helping people reach that point, that I will get through some of my stuff, so I can be there too, and be at that highly evolved being too. In the meantime, I need to make sure that I never get in my own way and get in the way of them, like whether it's their personal problems, ego things, whatever else, that this person is going to help this kid the whole way without imposing their own problems upon them and like ruining that cultivation. So like it'd be like you'd have to have the full-on Dalai Lama scenario where everybody around him is like, you are the Dalai Lama, you have one purpose, we have one purpose for being around you.
Nobody get in the way.
Yeah, like anybody who has a problem when they're helping the Dalai Lama is like, I can't help you right now. I gotta go deal with my problem, my mental crap, and like go through it and develop through it. Somebody else come in if you're able to and help it out. Like it has to be so pure in that way. So you need a community like the people surrounding a Dalai Lama or Krishnamurti or whatever, like disciples of the Buddha or Jesus that are evolved enough to create this kind of environment. So that's like the first step we have to get to, which is happening in the world. Like you can look around the world, whether it's just in general communities or on the internet or whatever. Like mindfulness is becoming a thing. All this other stuff. We are getting to the point where we're cultivating or creating the framework to have more communities of people who will not get in the way of the upbringing of a person.
Yeah.
So we're getting to that first stage, and then that will allow you are the Dalai Lama, I'm going to do everything I can for you, and I'm not going to get in your way because that would be harming the world, so I'm going to go elsewhere if I have problems. We're getting to that infrastructure so that next phase can happen, because that phase can't happen without that infrastructure in place.
I want someone just to even make a TV show about it.
Yeah. That'd be kind of neat to have a TV show that's like about building that infrastructure.
Yeah. Or the infrastructure is built.
We are gonna build Dalai Lamas.
Yeah.
Who's with me? It's like, alright, these are the things we need to have in place. Any of you have any ego problems? Any of you have any like mental attachment issues? Yeah, it's like and that'd be one that I would be fine not seeing the after effects because they'd be unimaginable by people. It'd just be like supernatural powers popping up everywhere. Everyone's just like so at peace and happy, and like the story would be over because a new paradigm would begin, and we could not even film that paradigm in today's world. So like that'd be like the one show that'd be fine. It getting to the point where now it's the story I want to see.
But every other show
it ends like, when people get like a tiny bit of smarts that like exist decently.
Yeah.
Movies. It's like movies in our paradigm are getting to a point where it's like, okay, that person is slightly more ready to be in the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So all the movies are about people getting to the infrastructure. Eventually, we're gonna have movies about the infrastructure's in place. And it's about people trying to make sure that they're good enough in this infrastructure to raise a Dalai Lama. And then eventually, we're gonna have movies that are about people getting to be Dalai Lamas. And then it's like we can't have movies. We can't even imagine movies in that far paradigm because it's so many removed from what stories are about today still.